Hey there viewers, welcome back to the Self-Made Auto channel. Got this 2006 Silverado 1500 I got towed in with a no start, no crank. Guy drove it to work in the morning, went to leave to go home, and there he sat. All the lights were on and didn't appear to be a dead battery, so he had it towed in on a flatbed and they just dropped it off. So he pushed it inside here, or didn't really push it in, I actually drove it in. I went out to get in it and to start it, and he was right. You know, I turned the key on, you know, dash lit up, radio, everything's nice and bright, you know, definitely not a dead battery. Turn the key, dash would go blank, nothing would happen. I've seen this before on some of the other Trailblazers and other GMs, and well, frankly, they have some problems with their ignition switches, so that's what I assumed this one was. So what I did is kind of held the key in the start position, turned it a little bit harder than you normally would, kind of wiggled it a little bit, and off she goes. So I decided to pull it inside before it craps out on us again. I highly suspect the ignition switch is bad, simply because that's how I got it running, and you know, I've seen it before. But what we're going to do is we're just going to see if we can make it not start and get 100% definitive test on it, and then if that's the case, we'll put a new switch in it. So the easiest thing we can do is grab ourselves a wiring diagram here. It's hybrid stuff. There we go, we got a starter circuit. So we'll see what wires are coming out of this switch, see the easiest place to test these. And that looks like our switch right there. Okay. So we've got a couple fused powers going into the switch here. And then we just have one start wire coming out of this yellow wire, so that should be a pretty easy test. And we can first start our test by going directly to this crank fuse in the underhood fuse box, and we'll check. We'll just check for power there while we're attempting to crank it. Hopefully it doesn't start. A lot of times when you fiddle with them like I did, they'll kind of continually start afterwards, but maybe we'll fiddle with it a little bit, see if we can. All we gotta do is catch it in the act one time, and we'll call it confirmed. So what we're after is our crank fuse. We can see that's right there. It's a 10 amp fuse. I've got the old scope on a rope. That's all we need to test this job. We'll get this hooked up, see what we see. So what we're going to do, I'm going to try to get this so we can see all this on the inside as we're cranking it. So it should be this fuse right here, this 10 amp fuse. I'm going to put this little fuse extension in there so we can get it up where we can test it. And then I'm going to jump across this with a fused jump wire with a 20 amp fuse in it nonetheless. Better than nothing, right? And then what I'm going to do is hook a long thing of test wire on here. We're going to run this inside. We'll hook it to our scope just so we have our test light, just so we have a good visual reference inside at the moment we are turning the key. And what we would expect is when we turn the key to the start position, the test light should light up if we're getting a command signal out here. And if it doesn't, what we'll do is we'll assume it's the ignition switch, in which case we'll go to the ignition switch, check the two power inputs, and then double check this wire at the switch to make sure we're not dealing with a broken wire. So this is the wire we've got from the outside here. We're just going to hook it on the end of our test light. Got the other end of the test light hooked to the ground, or a ground. The cigarette lighter is what I usually use. Then we're going to turn the key on and crank it over. And we can see here that I must have just gotten lucky starting it, because we can see clearly in the start position we have power going to the crank fuse. every time. I kid you guys not, I went on there and wiggled the key like this and it cranked. Obviously, because I've got it inside. Well, we know one thing is for sure. First of all, it's a good thing we didn't guess and just pop a switch in it. And second thing, we know that we have power obviously coming to the ignition switch, going out of it to the crank fuse. So now we got to look into this a little bit further. You know, I was noticing one thing
appeal here
before I was getting out is we have no key and ignition buzzer. There's nothing going on in here. Plus with the keys out and I turned the headlights on, we got no buzzer either. I don't know if it makes a difference, or if it has anything to do with it, but I just thought I'd mention that in case for some reason here in a little while we find out that it does make a difference. So we can get all our wire stuff off here. Put our crank fuse back in it. And go look at a wiring diagram and see where this goes from there. This is kind of bizarre. So if we come back over and look at our wiring diagram, we can see we check the just the one side of the ignition switch, the start circuit, which is right here, which is this yellow wire that ran to the crank fuse, which goes down to the PCM to send it, you know, a crank voltage input of some sort there. But the I actually kind of made a mistake on that, because the one that actually, I jumped the gun here, the one that runs to the actual starter relay up here comes from the other side of the switch. So we have to kind of look at something else. I got a little ahead of myself there. So we got to check this ignition fuse B. We'll check that, see if that has power. I think it does, because everything on the dash lights up. But this one here will come out with a pink wire out of the ignition switch, stays hot in the run and start position according to the diagram here. That comes down and is fed through ignition fuse E, which is a 10 amp. Hangs a Louis here, comes up, goes through our park neutral switch. That comes up and is the control wire for our starter relay. So the quickest test with this is, let's go right to the starter relay, because that's easy to get to. We'll hold it in the start position. We'll see if we hear an audible click coming from it. There's a lot of clicking when we're cranking on it. And then from there it goes right to the starter motor. So we should be able to figure this out. Let's go right to the starter relay. If that's not clicking, then we'll work backwards. But that's kind of the fastest thing to go to at this point. So we're back over to the fuse box here. We've got our starter relay, which is this relay right here. First we'll just see if we hear it or feel it clicking. Okay, try to start it. Just a second. Do it again. Okay, that's good. Okay, I just wanted to pull it out. It definitely is clicking. So that answers quite a few questions, actually. So we'll come back over here, and the starter relay is clicking. Now, that does not mean the starter relay is good. However, it does mean the rest of our ignition switch is good. We verified that this side of the ignition switch is good, the yellow wire in the start position, because that lit up our test light. And being that our relay is clicking, that would not click unless this side of the switch is good, which we know that this fuse is good. All these wires are good. This fuse is good. It comes down through. We know our neutral safety switch is good on the tranny. We know it's all good up inside the fuse box right from here. And we also know that wherever this yellow, the starter enable relay control circuit from the PCM is not being disabled, because without that ground here on the relay, we would have no clickage. So we've narrowed it down to basically the starter circuit. So now we have to see if this ignition fuse here is good. This 40 amp fuse, which we don't even have to check. We know that's good because that power feed came all the way over here and it ran the first wire that we tested. So we don't even have to look at that fuse. We automatically know it's good. So now we've narrowed it down to a single wire. We either have a bad relay, the contacts are burned out of it, or we follow this purple wire down. We have a bad starter motor, or starter solenoid or something along those lines. So let's just kind of yank this relay out and do a quick test and take it from there. I'm going to use one of these relay jumpers. It's going to allow us to get to our pins externally while having the relay in place. And then we're going to run a series of tests on here, which we already have quite a few knowns. We're going to see if the relay is working. If it is, we're going to go to the starter and see if we just have a bad starter. Okay, so we've got our jumper plugged in here, and we've got 85 and 86 on this side of the relay. So we should have, and then what's on this side? Yeah, 87 and 30. Okay, I had to remind myself here. So we should have power on one of these, which we do. And then we come over here, we should have power on one of these. 85 and 86 is our control side. So when we go to start it, what pin's this? This is 87. Pin 30 should become hot. Okay, go ahead and try to start it. Okay, let off it. Do it again. Let off it. Do it again. Let off it. Okay, so we can see that our relay is passing power, and technically if we jump it, oh, we get a little spark there. You guys can see that, but obviously our problem is located down a little bit further. Our relay's good, it's clicking, it is making contact. All our wiring is good up to this point, our fuses are good. So now we've got to kind of go down and see what's happening at the starter and take our diagnosis from there. Okay, let's see, where do we leave off here? So we're down to the fact that we know the starter relay is working, all the circuitry's good. We're looking at this purple wire now that runs directly to the starter solenoid. So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna put it up in the air and go down and have a look at it. So I know a few of you might question, why I'm going about it the way we're going about it, and I hope everybody's following along. But the only reason that I went to, the fuse box first, like we did with the test light, is because I was really suspicious of the ignition switch, to be quite honest with you. And I'm glad I didn't take a big fat guess and just slam it in there, because like I say, I mentioned in the beginning that when I brought this truck in to get it started, just kind of held the key forward a little bit harder, a little wiggle, off we went. And like I say, I've done them before in these trucks, and the parts stores, they stock several of them, and I was just gonna figured it was going to be a short video and show you how to test the ignition switch, but I'm glad we tested it anyways. Typically, you get something in with a no start, no crank, I guess depending on what it is, we can go right to the starter. We could have went here right in the very beginning and possibly going to get the same results as to whatever we're going to get now. But frankly, all the tests we did, we didn't have to tear anything apart. We could just do them right at the fuse box, and that's pretty easy. So in either case, we kind of just started at one end of the circuit and working towards the starter instead of starting at the starter and working back. And real-time testing, if we weren't shooting videos and stuff, this would be pretty quick. So I guess it's not a lot of involved time. And up until this point, we really didn't have to put it on a lift, but now we do. So I've got the truck lifted up a little bit here, super tight to record underneath. What I've done is I've come through the right fender well here, and this is our starter that sits in here. I don't know if you can see it or not. I hope you can. Kind of zoom in there a little bit. Well, here's the starter, the stud that runs right from the battery. You can see we've got power on that. Let me move my flashlight a little. I know that's pretty bright. I gotta still be able to see though. Okay. So like I say, here's the stud on the starter that runs from the battery. We've got power there. Then we've got the S terminal on the starter, which is right here, which should get hot if we turn it in the crank position. Okay, go ahead and crank it. Oops, stop. So my test light fell off. Well, I did see it light up though. Okay, crank it. Stop. Do it again. Okay, stop. Okay, so that means we are getting power down here, and that was right on the stud, so we know we you know, we're not testing the wire itself, we're actually testing the stud. So that tells us, you know, that we're getting, you know, we don't have a poor connection, you know, and checking this battery terminal here, you know we're not getting poor connection because we've got power at the stud. We'll just make sure this power is maintained when she cranks it. Go ahead and crank it. Okay, the power never went away. That's good. So now what I'm going to do is test light's hooked to ground. I'm going to hook it right to the starter case. And if we have a bad ground on the starter, our test light will light up. Okay, go ahead and crank it. Which is not the case. You can see our test light does not light up. And it appears that we've just got a bad starter solenoid, in which case we'll buy the whole starter motor. So let me just see something here. Yeah, our test light's so good. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So I guess in this case we could have started at the starter, but like I say, hindsight's always 20/20. And I wouldn't have started the method that I did if I didn't suspect the ignition switch. But this is the #1 reason why you go through and actually test the circuit instead of guess, because that could have taken you know, a few bucks out of our pocket. Would have had the cost of the ignition switch tied up into a guess and the labor to change it. So this guy just needs a starter, pretty plain and simple. It also needs a battery. I see the battery in it. It's the original 2006 AC Delco battery. And in just the time that it was sitting here with the key on for however many minutes it's been, lights are getting really dim. And I don't know if you noticed, but when we were testing the starter relay there, lights were pretty dim there. And when I come down to do this, I actually had to throw a jump pack on it because I see the headlights were really dim. And it hadn't been that long. So I'm going to go in and eat some lunch. I'm going to call down and get a starter. We'll put it on, verify our fix. Alright, lunch is over. I'm going to take and I already unhooked the battery. I'm going to get the wires off the starter. I'm just going to reach through the opening here in the wheel well. It's kind of hard to record, but just got your 2 wires, your little single signal wire to the solenoid and then our battery wire, but definitely make sure you got the battery unhooked for this. There's a little tin heat shield there. It goes on top of that solenoid. Just want to take and kind of push that up out of the way. There, it gives us a little more room. There's one. There's 2. A whole lot easier to do them from here than it is underneath. Come underneath. Yeah, we tried to use a black socket. That ain't gonna work, obviously. Let's go chrome. Yeah, it works like a charm. Perfect. I already got the wires off up top. Let's see if we can't get her wiggled out of here. I think that heat shield is what's holding me up here. It is. Take that off. That's the little tin shield that goes on that solenoid. That is holding us up here. We got back there a crank sensor or something maybe. What it looks like. Yeah, it looks like possibly the plug on the crankshaft sensor. Yeah, let me see what I can do. Right, now that I got a light, you can actually see what I'm doing. There's a plastic, little plastic guard here. Goes over the front of the starter. I think that's what was holding us up. I think. Now we're just kind of tangled up in the wires. It looked like it was possibly hitting that crank sensor, but Everything's kind of snug in here. Yeah, anyway, that's what this looks like. We got a lot going on here. You got your tranny lines in the way and everything else. Whoa! There she is. Just gonna clean up our end of our starter cable here, or our battery cable a little bit. Just had a little bit of crust on it. Get the new one, we'll put it in. Get our new one fed up in here. Ow. I don't remember these starters being this difficult. Not that it's difficult, it's just a lot of crap in the way. Get these wires out of the way. Well, I'm gonna have to move them wires down because kind of the battery cable is in my way. So I kind of stuff that down here. And the starter solenoid wire is in my way. Of course, we've got the oil level sensor there. It's got a wiring harness on it and the crank sensor. And this goes right back against the motor mount. There, that's easier. Probably didn't even have to take this thing off. Wires out of the way. Appears to be what I was hitting on. Kind of how my whole day's been going here. There. Get these bolts started. We'll get her snugged up here and put the heat shield back on it, and then get our wires hooked back up and we'll see if it works. Okay, I think we're done. Just about done. We haven't used any brake clean yet, so why don't we take our brake parts cleaner. Let's clean all of our grubby fingerprints off the new starter. We'll spray a little fluid film on those connections. There's not a single self-made auto video that's complete without brake parts cleaner. So we'll get our battery put in here before we get too far. This thing is toast. Can't believe it lasted this long. See, it is the original. I'm going to take and swap this out, and then we will find out if our diagnosis was good, but we know it is because we tested it. Dragon. Fly. There. There you have it, viewers. We're all done. Got this baby back on the road. This guy will be happy. Had a little tow truck ride, but it was definitely necessary. Starter was definitely junk. And I'm glad I didn't jump to conclusions with the starter switch. And like I say, I was pretty confident too. And that's why I started the diagnosing out like we did. Because I kid you not, I mean, just like it must have been, you know, purely coincidence that it did start. But it just goes to show that, you know, we shouldn't really jump to conclusions and just, you know, play the parts clown and, you know, go knocking parts at it, because who knows, it may have started when he showed up to get it, and, you know, he could have ended up, you know, a couple days later, same scenario, and that's not good when they call you back and say, guess what, you know, it's not doing, you know, it's not starting again. So that's why it always pays dividends, I think, to take a few minutes, go through it, do the quick checks, you know, particularly the stuff that's super easy, you know, stuff you can just test right at the fuse box with a simple test light, you know, nothing fancy, you know, no scopes, no scan tools, you know, just a wire diagram and a little common sense. But starter circuits are usually semi-simple, you know, until the PCM starts getting involved, which it's involved on this one too, but we knew that the starter relay was clicking, so that meant our computer portion of the control side of the relay was good. I'll put a little link in the description that explains how relays work if you're not familiar with that. And that's it. Here it is. Pretty easy. So anyhow, viewers, check us out on Facebook if you haven't already. You can like us there. You can find us on Google Plus too if you want to connect with us socially there. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I just ask that you consider it. That way there you can stay up to date with our latest publications. We try to put out weekly, but it all depends on our workload here at the shop. So I guess that's it. We got to move on. It's a busy day. So thanks for watching, viewers, and remember, if I can do it, you can do it.